What's up guys, it's Ross here on MGF Customs, and today I am really excited to finally be doing my first custom LEGO minifigure showcase video in 2021, and I never thought I would ever go back to do this one, but now, over 3 years later, we're celebrating the original DCEU, possibly for the last time, with the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League on HBO Max. And for this video, I finally have the entire Justice League, Superman in the new black suit, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman as he appeared in his solo movie actually, The Flash, and Cyborg. Of course, no Green Lantern though, or anyone else unfortunately, because Justice League 2 and 3 never happened and everything fell apart. That's why it's so crazy to even be doing this showcase at all, because I started on some of these figures over 3 years ago, and then after seeing what Joss Whedon and WB had done to the movie, I quietly canceled the project. But years of campaigning from fans all over the world finally convinced WB to allow Zack Snyder to finish Justice League as he originally intended it in 2017, but even better, and it is amazing. So now I'm finishing the original showcase, and this is easily the hardest I've worked on a showcase in a really long time, and I'm so proud of these figures. So I hope you enjoy the video, but if you still want to skip around, I'll try to add in the time codes. It feels kind of awesome to be doing a big showcase again though, so let's get started. The last son of Krypton, Kal-El, Henry Cavill's Superman in the black suit back in 2017. Oh, we got some studio interference. I did get started on a Superman custom inspired by the brighter suit back then in the god-awful Joss Whedon theatrical disaster. Don't mind the mustache, by the way. I'll try to get rid of that. But it was pretty good with a decent painted face. It was a little cross-eyed looking though, and I used a LEGO Superman torso with most of it repainted in metallic blue, including the arms. However, I just left the Batman vs. Superman legs on it and never finished it because of how let down I was by that insulting cut of the movie. Anyway, all these years later, Zack Snyder finally had the VFX teams recolor his suit in the Snyder cut to be the black suit, so I knew I would need to make an entirely new figure. So this new one is 100% hand painted and sculpted by me. Never really got the painted face quite right with the previous attempts several years ago, and this one actually still took me 3 tries to get right, but I think I finally got really close this time. His hairpiece is actually from Lifebrick, by the way. I ordered their Endgame Time Heist pack in like 2019 and it just came in, so this custom hairpiece is technically meant for Ant-Man actually. The muscle definition is all sculpted on too, inspired by the regular LEGO Superman torso muscles. Then I also added similar definition on the arms, including the biceps. Also, there's a pair of painted tiny tactical glove tops, and if you've been watching the channel for a long period of time, you know that those definitely gotta be on there. The Superman crest was the last bit I sculpted on, but it wasn't exactly flat, so I cut out the shape of the crest again as a white 3D element and glued that on as an extra layer before sanding all of it and all of the muscles and painting the entire suit, which I just finished with the wraparound boot detail. It was all pretty tedious obviously, especially all this painted detail, and I really wanted to get that House of L crest right, and one of my patrons actually suggested that I add a little outline within the S once I got it on there, and that definitely helped. And finally, the cape may look black, but it's actually just a really dark gray, and I hope this isn't my last Henry Cavill Superman custom, as it would still be cool to make the traditional blue suit with all of the same muscle definition and everything, but it wouldn't be for a really long time. Ben Affleck's Batman in his regular suit. I decided to go with this version and not the tactical suit in 2017 because I wanted to have a traditional looking Justice League, and I wanted to take a second crack at the BVS figure I did. Obviously the more traditional looking team wasn't possible anyway because I had to make Black Suit Superman. Regardless, the cowl here was actually 3D printed by a vendor at the time called Cyclops Bricks, who made a bunch of cool pieces in 2017 and then sort of dropped off the face of the earth without fulfilling a bunch of orders apparently. But also back in 2017 when I painted this, I had to smooth it over with some thicker gloss paint first before painting on the main matte layer. Then I dotted the eyes, painted the mouth on the stubble and all of that inside. I think this is definitely a big step up from my very first Batman v Superman cowl, and yeah, I also did steal the spongy cape. I need to order more of those apparently. One thing I would have done differently now actually is the torso, because I just used Legos, but at the time I also added on these 3D utility belt pieces to both sides on the front and on the back. Now though, I would have just made the torso entirely from scratch like I did with Superman, but I decided to leave this so I could hopefully move on with my life. The arms are actually still pretty great with all kinds of 3D pieces on them, including the blades, which are somehow really sturdy actually, and also I've got another pair of tiny tactical glove tops on him as well. But obviously the real fun of making Ben Affleck's Batman suit is the texture pattern, which has to be painstakingly painted all throughout the figure, one dash at a time. And next, the legs, which I actually just wrapped up as the final component for this entire showcase. They only continue that pattern, and overall it still really does resemble the BVS legs. I did quite a bit because I took a lot of inspiration from them, and after checking the reference though, I knew that I wanted to change up the design just a little bit. So again, that meant doing the little pointed dash marks all over the legs on every single side of them. Positioning each one can be really annoying, and I messed up plenty of times. The back of the legs right here were actually the last bit of work for this entire project, but it's quite a process doing those. It gets very repetitive and it's very slow, and Ben Affleck was, and hopefully still will be, an amazing Batman at least one more time in The Flash, even if it isn't in Justice League 2. Obviously a Batman who had basically given up and been pushed well past his limits after 20 years wasn't for everyone. We all want to see Batman stick to his principles and never give in, but I still appreciated what Zack Snyder was going for. Even Batman can eventually, after 2 decades, lose his way and still be inspired to be better again by Superman. I never found it to be edgy, but actually fairly realistic. Diana of Themyscira, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, also a figure I started in 2017 with the curved torso from Arielite, custom painted by me and featuring 3D elements. The arms were basically a copy of the BVS versions I did in 2016, where I essentially just continued the printed arm design that Lego already had going with the gauntlets, and she's got a pair of tiny tactical glove tops too. I can't really remember, but I think her sword started out as like a brick forged sword or something that I cut and sanded quite a bit before painting it. I even got the subtle Amazonian designs running through the blade on both sides too, and her shield is literally just the BVS one, except of course I painted some weathering on it and some scratches and scuff marks, and now I probably would have painted a ton of detail on the back of it too, like I did on Captain America, but again, I kind of wanted to move on with my life. So Diana's modded Cape Madness waist cape is also very similar to my BVS version. I cut it the same way back in 2017 and painted the exact same design onto it pretty much, and just recently finished it. Now the main strap does run over the top of her torso here and then all the way onto the back. And this is actually work that I just recently completed because I realized I had my Batman v Superman Wonder Woman on my desk, and I started painting silver accents into the armor, and then I found my original Justice League Wonder Woman in an organizer, and I was like, oh, I still have to do the entire back. So I just actually did all of this, and between like the armor and the additional straps here, there were at least 7 different 3D pieces cut and glued in place all before the paintwork, and so that was fun, and it continues on to the waist cape as you saw too. Finally, her new pair of legs are direct copies of the BVS legs I did in 2016, and just like Batman, I checked the reference to see if there were any changes I might want to make to the design like I did with his legs, but nope, it's still actually a really good design, and I actually did not want to change a thing this time. So I got the Empire Strikes Back to tank Luke printing off of each leg, and then just painted it all again over a couple days pretty recently, and I just absolutely love how these new versions turned out. One last little detail you may have noticed are the little star designs that I actually painted onto both sides of her face for both tiaras on the regular and aggressive facial expressions. But that's it for Wonder Woman though, and if I were to have started on this figure now, I definitely would have painted the torso in a metallic red and the waist cape in a metallic dark blue, but I'm still really proud of how this figure turned out regardless, and I'm just really glad that Gal Gadot is sticking around as Wonder Woman for the foreseeable future, because since 2014 she's been absolutely incredible in the role, and especially in Zack Snyder's Justice League. I still have yet to see 1984 though. This guy right here was the real tragedy of quietly canceling the original 2017 showcase. I really liked how my Ezra Miller Flash was coming along at the time, but again, I just couldn't finish it after seeing Justice League, but I was pretty happy to finally go back and do the rest now. So Barry here features Lego's fantastic Flash helmet painted by me. The entire figure is painted by me fully 100%, and then the whole painted figure is just really an organized mess of 3D torso armor pieces, sculpted wires everywhere, sculpted shoulders, all of the things. It was tough to cut out and glue in all of the 3D pieces all over the figure, doing the lightning bolt back here on the chest, though I don't fully remember how I made the base of it. But beyond all of that, there are these wires, and let me tell you, these were a pain. You basically cut out very thin little bits of Procreate, hope you cut them down to size right for each spot on the figure, and then you stick them onto a dab of glue in the right starting point, then lift each one up, get another dab of glue under there for the middle of each wire, and then lift up the rest of it again for the last bit of glue underneath at the end point of each of these wires. So 3 little bits of glue underneath each of these wires, most of these wires. Some of them just had 2, but they basically, that went everywhere, all over the figure, and then that would always leave little bits of glue still underneath each one of the wires on top of my painted figure. So I had to also spend time very carefully and precisely going over those bits of glue next to each one of these wires. There are 45 of them, by the way, and try to weave my way around them with paint to basically make it look like there was never any glue in the first place. So, yeah, it wasn't exactly fun, and that was really the big challenge, I think, of making Ezra Miller's Flash beyond all the 3D elements and all of that crazy stuff. Ultimately, though, I'm not gonna lie, coming up with and organizing the entire painted design and all those 3D pieces underneath the wires, like before they even got glued on, that was all really tedious too, and definitely not easy to paint, especially around the legs and like the toe areas here and the feet. And I briefly mentioned that the figure is fully painted, and that does include the face underneath, which works when the helmet is on, but when it's off, it just literally looks like Sheldon Cooper from that show I'll probably never watch. Also, more painted glove tops. Anyway, I feel like we finally got to truly see Ezra Miller as Barry Allen in the Snyder Cut, and he was so much better, and I could not believe how much bigger of a role he played. That new sequence he was given was unbelievable, and I had no idea that was even shot or a thing, but it blew me away. I'm still really looking forward to the Flash solo movie, and I really hope they use the inevitable time travel or exploration through the multiverse to explain away Ben Affleck's inevitable recast, but that probably won't happen. Either way, I'm just really glad I finally finished Ezra Miller's Flash. He's definitely the best of the best. Well, I bet this one has left some of you a little bit confused because I decided to make Aquaman as he appeared in his 2018 solo movie instead of his earlier Justice League suit. I loved the costumes in Aquaman and always wanted to make that showcase but never got around to it, so I figured I'd nail two birds with one stone by making a figure to go toward that. Not saying I'll ever make that showcase, but this is also just the definitive Aquaman armor. This is where it all really started again too, by the way. I wasn't planning on doing this showcase, but I had Batman v Superman playing in the background with Zack Snyder's commentary over it like a month ago, and it was about 1 a.m. and I started to think about how I would finish this project if I were to do it, and that's when I thought, what if I just did a ton of Aquaman sculpting like right now? So I sculpted the muscles that night and then the gauntlets into the following afternoon. And I found these amazing tridents offered by Leisle Brick, I think that's how you say it, but it's Lego quality with those darker gold tones actually integrated into the piece. I have no idea how they make these, but they are phenomenal. It's perfect and saved me a lot of work. It's a little bit big, but honestly, I couldn't care less. Anyway, there's a lot going on here, so let's just get started with the hairpiece, which is heavily sanded and drilled out on the inside to accommodate the painted body. But more importantly, I brushed on shades of chestnut brown and beige because Arthur's hair is also really blonde too, so I wanted to create sort of a transition here, and honestly, I think it's my best fading effect to date. I basically would wet my brush, dab it on my rag a couple times, then guide the paint, always going from the bottom first and then up without allowing it to accumulate too heavily anywhere, and then I would taper off each streak, each brush stroke with my finger. I wasn't really planning on sculpting the beard either, but Colin over on my Patreon story suggested it, so I figured I'd give it a try, and I'm glad I did too because it turned out really great, and it's probably my best sculpted beard so far, and I think it really does a lot to complete the overall look, and I use the same wet brush techniques, and I mean, just look at that, it's Arthur Curry. Now I'm going to remove the hairpiece and King Atlan's trident here for a minute, just to give you a good look at the full armor and the endless amount of scales that I painted. So the sculpted bits were all prepped and I applied the base colors all over the figure and then got to work on individually painting every single one of these scales and dots on each leg, running all throughout the figure. And this is the type of that really demands patience because this kind of felt like it would just never end, but it was also oddly satisfying throughout the process, so most of it is entirely random, but I also knew that they would all still blend together really well regardless of how perfectly I painted them, and I thought that was it, so I checked the reference and nope, the aquatic man has waist armor too, and side leg armor, and listen, by the time I was done, I had had spent like 4 straight days working on this guy and Cyborg, who you'll see in a minute, before I started developing lower back pain for the first time in my life. But regardless, I grabbed another Cape Madness waist cape, mapped out how I wanted to cut it with paint, and then painted the entire piece with all of its detail. And eventually I completed the Polynesian fishman here, and I gotta say, the colors alone on this figure really stand out and are just really awesome. Like, this is easily the most vibrant figure I have ever made, and you know, Jason Momoa is the perfect Aquaman, and I can't wait to see him again in Aquatic Man 2 whenever that happens, but we'll see. But I'm just really satisfied with the overall Atlantean look that I was going for with this figure. I didn't use any matte paints or anything, all metallics for this one, specifically so that everything would shine and really stand out, and that was definitely the right call. A lot of sculpting, a lot of tedious detail, and it was very slow and repetitious, but worth it in the end. This is the King of Atlantis. Finally, just like Aquaman, Ray Fisher's Cyborg is a custom that I was dreading in 2017 for obvious reasons, and then I didn't wind up making him. So, like I kind of mentioned with Aquaman, the idea was to expedite the sculpting process on both and quickly make enough progress to completely remove any excuse I had to not finish the Justice League. Obviously, that still required me to attempt the most complicated sculpt I have ever done, but first, I got out my new hand drill and got to work on attacking the torso on both sides, the front and the back, and I also used my Dremel for this too, and eventually drilled out the arms too in the center, because Cyborg is actually more lanky than you would think, so the idea was to drill out sections of the base body so I could embed more deeply ingrained sculpted detail and then build out all of this armor on top of what I now had literally within the minifigure. Now, it looks a little insane, and that's because it was, and I binged the entire series of Mr. Robot while just sculpting his upper half, but really, sculpting is just going piece by piece, layer by layer. You think about how you want to do it, put on a piece or layer, engrave a bit of detail in that piece if you need to, sand it if you need to, then rinse and repeat, and I did that on and off on this guy for like 2 weeks. The same thing went for the legs too. I sanded the hell out of the thighs first because I wanted to sculpt on the leg armor while still keeping them posable, which was really important to me to maintain. And I also, of course, wanted to drill out the center of each leg too, because just like the rest of the minifigure, I wanted to ingrain those other precise details. And I literally actually engraved more detail into the sides of each foot because I didn't want to be really adding on to the feet at all and bulking those out unnecessarily. So it was a whole crazy tedious process prepping this entire minifigure, and there were just plastic shavings everywhere as I worked to clean up the minifigure too, because you have to scrape them out of the actual figure as well, and it was a whole thing. But eventually I got the whole figure prepped and ready to go for painting, and I got to work. It took a while just to apply the base black layers first, and like with any high detail sculpt, the idea is to paint the innermost bits inside and then kind of work your way out with the paint. And in this case, it was the inner body first with a dark gunmetal silver color, and then once the gunmetal was inserted in those areas, I had to clean up around it with more black, and then finally I painted the entire figure in silver while still keeping some of the outlines running throughout the entire figure to maintain some definition. I even sanded the hell out of Lego's Cyborg helmet on the sides, and then I actually sculpted a little bit of a cheek section onto the right side of it too, and painted a ton of detail really onto the entire piece here. It was, I think, the last thing I worked on for Cyborg, and then also the neck detail underneath there that extends onto the head, which I painted the lower half of underneath. It was a wild painting process in addition to the sculpting process, but I think you get the idea. This entire figure was fully sculpted and painted by me, aside from the face and like the red eye. And I even got to work with some oil-based paints, some enamels paints for the silver hands too, so I could get some durable paint on there. And I haven't worked with those types of paints since like I was 10 years old, so that was cool, and also really toxic, I guess. But the back is really my favorite part of this entire figure. I kind of went nuts with the detail in each piece, and in some ways it's kind of like an Iron Man suit where you have to be really deliberate in choosing which details you pack in, because inevitably not everything can fit, so you got to be really selective. And yeah, it was a little insane, but worth it. I did the thing that scared my 2017 self and made Cyborg as Ray Fisher portrays him in the DCEU. And unfortunately, I think this is probably the first and last time I will get to make Ray Fisher as Cyborg, which is a shame because I thought he was fantastic and his sequences were absolutely amazing. Ray Fisher basically got his own Cyborg solo movie within the Snyder Cut, and he plays a super important role in the story, but WB and Joss Whedon just hit the delete button in 2017 and then abused him and the cast on set apparently during the reshoots. So that's cool, and that's gonna do it also for the entire showcase, I guess. My first and last DCEU Justice League showcase, which is kind of weird, but thanks for sticking around thus far anyway, and let's go ahead and wrap up this video. They've never fought us, not us united. Yeah, this is great and all, Zach. But the reviews for BVS were pretty scathing, so we're gonna need you to toss in some jokes and make this a little lighter. Okay, yeah, I can shoot some scenes like that, but we also need this thing to be hard locked at 2 hours because people are dumb. Oh, and we just hired the Avengers director, Joss Whedon, so we can finally just blatantly copy Marvel. Sound good? Well...
And you will be nice to him!
Or he'll abuse you. No, hold on a second. We have to introduce Cyborg, Flash, and Aquaman all in just this movie, and we still have Batman, Wonder Woman. I must have missed the part where that's my problem. I think you and I are gonna be great friends. In what world do you think I can service all the new heroes in a 2-hour cut? Yeah, I'm out. No, Ben, wait. I gotta go too. Hey, where's Ray?
This is my auto defense system!
Alright guys, like I said, that's gonna do it for the Zack Snyder's Justice League showcase. Thanks again for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed it because I worked so intensely on this Cyborg and Aquaman for a few too many days in a row, and then, like I briefly mentioned, I started getting lower back pain for the first time ever. These were like 8 to 12 hour days of hunching over to work on these pretty much non-stop. Visit to the orthopedic and a quick x-ray later revealed I had actually sort of inflamed the muscles in my back. So I got slowed down a little bit there because then while painting, I was also nursing my back with pain cream, vibrating gaming chair pillows, ibuprofen, and all that fun stuff, but I got it done. And it was worth it. This project was worth bringing back, and I hope we'll be able to convince the corporate executives and CEOs of Warner Brothers to bring back the Snyderverse, with well over 1 million tweets now using hashtag restore the Snyderverse. Even Zack Snyder himself still believes there's a chance, and that this new movement that has shattered records can't be ignored. If WB set aside all of the drama and went into production on Justice League 2 and maybe 3, if they did it back to back, they would have a huge hit, because now even general audiences have finally been won over to the DCEU with Zack Snyder's Justice League, and with vaccines rolling out and theaters would likely be open to full capacity by the time they release it. Plus, Marvel isn't heading for another Avengers film for quite a long time, so now is the time for them to figure it out and restore the Snyderverse, even if it has to be exclusive to HBO Max. There are more people interested in the DCEU now than ever before, and even if they maybe have to condense it all into 1 3-hour movie or something, the world deserves to see the nightmare reality come true, the Flash traveling back in time to fix it, and finally the Justice League, the Amazons, Atlanteans, the Green Lantern Corps, and all of humanity's militaries unite to face Darkseid and the forces of Apocalypse to finish the series. And with the CEO of WB claiming they're doing a multiverse now with DC Films, it makes even less sense to completely abandon all of that, completely exclude Zack Snyder and the final Justice League films, considering they could exist in their own universe. It's contradictory, actually, but if it still never happens, I'm just glad we at least got the Snyder Cut, and with it, some closure. And with that, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and ready the Armada, because we have to use the old ways.
I want you to remember, Clark, in all the years to come, in all your most private moments, I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
I'm not gonna lie, it was tough coming. Okay, that's thunder. That's cool. Yeah, we got a really bad storm, of course. That was just the Speed Force. Don't mind that. Inside to a that hit the floor. Hey, Diana, quick question. So, like I was saying, I had a quick... Where is that coming from?
It's me, Martian Manhunter.
I have turned 100,000 worlds to dust, and now that I have the anti-life equation, all of existence shall be mine.
That's great, but when's it all happening?
Never!
What?
The bell's already been rung, and they've heard it. But in the dark, among the stars,
The future has taken root.